What is shaken, Internet? This is Salt bringing you the How to Tank for Dummies Halls of Valor guide. In this guide, I will be explaining how to tank the Halls of Valor 5-man dungeon. I will detail any interesting trash mobs, all of the bosses, and the related achievements for the dungeon, focusing primarily on normal and heroic difficulties. I will briefly cover things to watch for in mythic difficulty as well, although most of the difference is just the less forgiving numbers. Now, for those of you in queue or already in the instance, a quick overview. Watch for dragons dropping fire during Boss 1, avoid balls of fire and stand in the protective shell and use a defensive cooldown for Shield of Light during Boss 2, on the left when entering the hall. Spread out when Boss 3, on the right when entering the hall, prepares to leap around. Pick up the shield and use it when Boss 4 casts Ragnarok, and tell everyone to get inside your shield. And run away from Boss 5 when he casts Radiant Tempest, and move to the symbol above your head when you're branded. Now, the Halls of Valor is the throne room of Odin, god of the Valkyr and Titans or something, located in eastern Stormheim. The whole dungeon is basically heaven for the Valkyr, as you'll even kill one boss just to have a rebirth as an angel ghost thing. Now, there are 5 main bosses in the dungeon, with 2 additional world quest bosses. Additionally, there is a pickup item world quest associated with the dungeon, and I will discuss that as we go through the dungeon. First, let's go ahead and discuss the trash before the first boss, Heimdall. You'll see most of these mobs throughout the dungeon, but first you'll see them here. The champions are just melee adds that can do a single hard-hitting strike and just should be rounded up. The Thunder Callers are casters that, cast stuff. In addition to their normal cast, they also use Thunder Strike, which puts a little thundery circle around a party member that blows up after a few seconds and deals a good chunk of damage. Be sure to stay out of these circles or keep others out of them as well. Now, you'll fight a single Storm Drake and a pack of other adds as well. They will summon tornadoes and do cone breath attacks. Simply face the Drake away from your teammates and move away from the tornadoes. The further, the better. Now, Heimdall is the first boss just after a handful of trash. Heimdall does 3 moves that you care about, the biggest concern being Horn of Valor. When Heimdall blows this horn, everyone will take a bunch of damage, and then a bunch of dragons will sweep across the bridge, laying down lightning fire or something like that. You can tell where these dragons are coming from by looking to the side of the bridge. More dragons will come later in the fight, so you'll have to dodge more fire, although only one dragon will come at a specific time. Watch for where the dragons are coming from so you can plan your movement accordingly. Do note that they can come from both sides of the dungeon, or of the bridge. Next up is Bloodletting. This is a cone attack Heimdall will use on his tank that lowers your healing received for a few seconds. Be sure to have active mitigation up for this hit or shortly after, and as always, face the boss away from your allies. Now, finally is Dancing Blade, which is where Heimdall will throw out a spinning blade at a random ally. The blade will spin in place, dealing lots of damage to anyone standing in it, so don't stand in it. Basically, just don't stand in fire, don't stand in blades, and face the boss away from your friends. Clap, clap, done. Now, after Heimdall reaches 10% health, he gives up like a wussy, and you can move on. Very quick note here, if you're doing the Deeds of the Past world quest for the Kirin Tor to collect 3 books here, the first book is on the left just past Heimdall's gate. Now, for trash in the next section, there's a ton to say. You have to fight a few sets of trash before getting into the main hall. These include some new guys: Mystics, Rune Carvers, and Sentinels. Sentinels are the big guys that do a pulse that damages and knocks back nearby players, so make sure not to be close to an edge or nearby mobs or something silly like that. Also, they'll put lines of lightning down, called Crackle, on the ground, so move out of these very quickly. Mystics are the healers of the group. They'll do a basic heal over time move that put down a rune of healing, which heals anything standing in the rune by a percentage of their maximum health. Interrupt them as often as you can and pull anything out of the healing rune. Rune Carvers are the stronger casters, using Shattered Rune to do a ton of damage to one target, or Etch to do a lot of damage over a channel duration. You need to interrupt Shattered Rune especially, since it does a lot of damage to random people. Now, once you get to the main hall, you get to see even more new enemies. Marksmen are generic ranged enemies. Basically, step out of the path of their piercing shot if you can, but mostly watch out as they jump around the room randomly. Be careful for pulling more trash when they do this. Now, there's a lot of trash in this hall, but my recommendation for the short term is killing nearly all of it. If you don't, you'll likely regret it later, as you have to go through this hall at least 3 times before the end of the dungeon. Now, there are mugs on the table that you can pick up and throw at enemies, basically removing them from combat for 20 seconds. Note, If they were already fighting you, after they come back in 20 seconds, they will immediately start fighting you again, no matter where you are. So you also can't like hurt them when they're mugged either. So I wouldn't bother trying to do much with this mug mechanic unless you really know what you're doing. Since you have to come through this way so many times, I think it's best just to clear it. Be safe, not sorry. Now you can go right or left when you enter the hall. Left takes you to Herja's room, while right takes you to Fenrir's hunting grounds. You'll have to go both ways eventually, so I'll just assume you're going to go left to the closer of the two bosses and discuss Herja's trash first. Now before Herja, you'll have to fight some shield maidens and a purifier. The shield maidens are basic melee adds that also do a cone attack healing debuff. So face them away from your group and use a cooldown when you get lots of stacks of Mortal Hue, that healing debuff. Especially in the second group where there are 3 shield maidens. Now the purifier repeatedly casts Cleansing Flames, which shoots light balls at a group member that will explode on impact. You need to interrupt and CC this guy as much as possible, but the tank should worry more about the Mortal Hue stacks on the shield maidens first. Let the group worry about the purifier. You have to fight 3 mini-bosses before getting to Herja that will teach you basically 3 of Herja's moves. First, the aspirant in the middle will cast Blast of Light, knocking back anyone in front of her and dealing massive damage. You need to move out of the way when she begins casting this. On the left, you have Solston, who will create a bubble during the fight. Everyone should move into the bubble to avoid being damaged by the lightning storm outside of it. On the right is Olmer. Olmer? I think that's how do you say it? Olmer? Who casts Searing Light, which is an interruptible single-target spell, and Sanctify, which creates holy fireballs that spin out from Olmer in waves. Interrupt Searing Light as often as possible and avoid as many fireballs from Sanctify as you can. Now, once Olmer and Solston are taken care of, Herja herself will hop down into the arena. As you already saw, Herja has 3 moves that she's going to use. Shield of Light, which knocks back all players in a line in front of Herja. Eye of the Storm, which is a bubble move. The bubble move we just saw, and Sanctify, which is the dodge fireballs move. Now Herja will only use Eye of the Storm and Sanctify when she has a beam of light coming from one of the 2 guys you just killed. When you're close to Solston, she'll create bubbles, and if you're close to Olmer, she'll use the fireballs. Basically, the longer you're closer to one of these guys, the harder these moves will hit, too. So you actually want to move Herja back and forth across the room. If you stand in the middle, Herja will actually be able to do both moves. So bring her back and forth until she only has 1 beam from 1 guy. Now you can actually use Shield of Light to get knocked across the room, dragging Herja over afterwards. Just make sure you don't aim Shield at Light of anyone else, as it can kill squishy targets very, very quickly. Additionally, Herja will debuff people to explode and hurt people around them and shoot lightning at group members that bounces around to nearby people, depending on which guy she's close to. The strategy for both of these is the same. Don't group up. The only time you should be anywhere near other people is during Eye of the Storm, the bubble move. And even then, the bubble is really big enough for the both of you. Now you need to ping-pong Herja back and forth across the room after every Shield of Light or so. Get in the bubble, avoid fireballs, and otherwise just burn her down. Again, in case you're on the Deeds of the Past world quest, the second book is on the table in the main hall just before going into Herja's main chambers. If you didn't get it on the way to Herja, pick it up now on the way back. Now the next boss is Fenrir, and is on the opposite end of the main hall. You've already seen all the trash before, so I'm not going to cover it again. But once you reach the other end of the hall, you'll see a portal, and walking into it will transfer you to the Fields of the Eternal Hunt. There's a lot of new trash in here, in different places, but first I'm going to actually talk about the boss. Fenrir actually doesn't spawn where it shows on the map in the southwest corner. Instead, he spawns in the northwest corner killing hunters, or in the southeast corner killing bears. You can actually follow his footprints if you want, or just look up to see if he's in one of these locations. I recommend going towards his spawn point, as the other path will just make you have to clear a bunch of extra trash. In the southeast, you'll have to deal with bears, which reduce your armor and deal heavy damage in a cone. Use a cooldown if you get a lot of bears attacking you at once, as the reduced damage will make them hurt a lot. Let's see. In the middle are the bowls, which deal heavy single target damage. Also, they'll deal damage to nearby melee and enrage at 40% health, doing a lot more damage, so be careful. Now, to the west are some trappers and falconers, which will make some traps and summon falcons, respectively. Other than hitting hard, falconers and their falcons aren't really worth mentioning, but the traps will stun players and deal a lot of damage over time. Be sure to move off of traps as soon as you see them put down. Finally, there are a bunch of wolves in the southwest corner, where you'll finally end up actually killing the boss. Now, they don't do anything special, but they are stronger the more wolves that there are. So if you pull more than one pack, get ready with the cooldowns. So now let's go ahead and discuss Fenrir himself. As I said, he'll actually spawn in the top left or the bottom right corners first, where you'll have to engage him and get him down to about 60% health. After that, he'll retreat to his lair in the bottom left corner, where he'll slowly heal up to full health. If you engage him again while he's licking his wounds, he'll stop healing, which might save you a little time, but probably isn't worth it in most cases unless you've cleared all the trash near his cave first. Now, Fenrir does 3 or 4 moves that we'll have to watch for. First is Ravenous Leap, which will target 2 players at his initial spawn point, and 3 or 4 players back at his lair in the second phase. After a few seconds, Fenrir will jump to the targeted players, putting a DOT stack on everyone in his path, which can stack. Because of this, when Ravenous Leap starts, everyone should fan out and take a couple steps back to avoid getting multiple stacks of this. The second important move is Claw Frenzy. It does a bunch of damage that ignores your armor and can't be dodged or parried. So like, WTF, Blizz? Now the saving grace is that the damage is split up between anyone near you. So make sure at least one other person is near you for each of these casts, and use a cooldown during it if you can. The third move only happens when Fenrir has retreated to his lair, and is called Scent of Blood. This is a simple fixate on a random player, which you can't do anything about. The affected player should just run away for a few seconds until the fixate ends, where Fenrir will turn back towards you. Watch out for any ads that the fixated player catches while they're running around like crazy, though. Now, the last move that Fenrir uses is Unnerving Howl, but it really doesn't do much of anything to tanks. To most tanks, anyway. It interrupts spell casts, but most tanks aren't casting spells, so you don't really have to worry about it. Do be aware that on heroic difficulty and up, this will spawn ads at Fenrir's cave, but they are just like the wolves from the trash. So, basically, spread out for the leap, use a cooldown for Claw Frenzy, and /laugh when your party members get fixated on. Now, for those of you on the Deeds of the Past World Quest, the third and last book is on some barrels in the main hall, right before the portal to Fenrir's area. If you didn't grab it on the way in, grab it on the way out. Now, as for optional bosses, both of them exist in Fenrir's area as well. First is Earl Nock the Beastbreaker, who shows up on the west side of north of Fenrir's final den. He does cone attacks that also create spikes from the ground. Simply sidestep this when he starts smashing the ground and move out of the nasty swirls. Second is Arthfail, which is a very large bear that appears in the cave behind where all the other bears live. He's simple because he only attacks the tank with melee moves and Rending Claws, which is just a single target hard-hitting move. At half health, he will enrage, doing 3 times the damage. So be prepared with cooldowns here, but only the tank will be taking any damage, so it really shouldn't be too bad. Now that we've covered everything in Fenrir's area, the only thing we have to do is the last room to get to. Head back to the main hall and through the giant gate, where a light bridge will appear that whisks you up to the throne room. Note that you get to actually run super fast after killing both Herja and Fenrir thanks to Odin's blessing. Also note that the ads can follow you on this light bridge, so don't try and, run past them. Now, when you reach the throne room, you'll have to talk to the Vrykul Kings and challenge each one in turn. Once you kill 2 of them, challenging the third will send the remaining 2 at you all at once. Now, each of these kings have one special move, and once you kill that one, the others will all gain that move too. So each fight gets slightly more difficult. From left to right, we have Unruly Yell, that interrupts casters and deals lots of damage, but can be interrupted. Sever, that increases physical damage taken for 12 seconds. Honored Ancestor, which summons a little skeleton that walks toward the king and will heal him if it touches him. And Wicked Dagger, which is a single target nuke that also reduces healing taken for a short time. Now, I recommend doing them from left to right for simplicity's sake, although you'll pretty much have to use a cooldown at the end when 2 of them are both using Sever together. The Ancestor one can be a bit of a pain, but the core ideas are to use a cooldown for Sever, interrupt Unruly Yell, kite kings away from Ancestors, or CC and kill the Ancestors, and have non-tanks suffer through Wicked Daggers. Once all 4 kings are down, Skovald will show up for some roleplay. During the roleplay, anyone in your group can pick up the Aegis of Agrimar, which adds a little extra action button for you. Using this will create a shield around you for a few seconds, which is very useful for the upcoming fight. Now, Skovald has a move that only tanks have to deal with, a move that only the old Aegis holder has to deal with, and a move that everyone will have to deal with. Note that even if your group members pick up the Aegis instead of you, anyone can use it. And even if they're morons about using it, they will drop it during the fight and you will be able to pick it up. Now first, the tank move. Savage Blade is a move that Skovald will use constantly on his tank, damaging you and applying a very strong DOT. If you have active mitigation up during this, you will not take the DOT, so be sure it's up every time he casts Savage Blade. Second, the Aegis Wielder move. Ragnarok is a channeled move that does raid-wide damage for a long time, and does more damage for each second it's being cast. You can't interrupt this, so the group member holding the Aegis should use the shield during Ragnarok, and everyone should move behind it. This will nullify the damage from the move completely. Note that the shield lasts just long enough to deflect the entire duration of the move, so if you use it too early, it'll be gone before the end of Ragnarok, and it has a decently long cooldown, so you can't actually just use it again whenever you want. After each cast of Ragnarok, Skovald will take away the shield from the player and use it himself. During this time, he will be completely invulnerable from all damage from any attacks, unless you're directly behind him, and he's going to go ahead and throw fireballs around to boot. You should avoid the fireballs, but stay behind him to keep on hurting him. Afterwards, he'll go ahead and drop the Aegis, and then your group can pick it up for use on the next Ragnarok. Finally, Skovald will rush around the room like a madman. Not much to say here other than try to spread out to avoid doubling up on damage. Note that on Heroic, little flame adds will spawn while Skovald is shielding himself, and they should be killed very quickly as they attack the nearest player to them, and they drop flames on the ground. After Skovald gets the axe, Odin eventually comes down to fight you himself, which at least means no trash. Odin is the 5th and final boss, and he's got 3 or 4 moves we're going to go ahead and talk about. First up is Radiant Tempest. This is a huge circle that Odin throws out, doing lots of damage and knocking back players. You have several seconds to move out of this, but the radius is so big, so as soon as you see it, you need to get a move on. Next is Spears. Spears of Light will constantly sprout up from the ground. The later in the fight, the more spears will pop up. You should move away from the swirls to avoid getting hit by the spears. After summoning all the spears, Odin will detonate them, causing them to blow up into little balls of light that move outward. If you get hit by one of these balls, you will take lots of damage and get stunned for a few seconds. Make sure to watch out for the balls of light. Finally is Runic Brands. This places a brand on each of the 5 players, which puts a symbol above your head. You'll notice that there are actually 5 symbols on the ground around the room. Each player needs to go to their corresponding symbol within a few seconds of being branded. Doing so will give you a big buff for healing and damage that will make the fight much faster. And you've been in this dungeon long enough, right? Quick note here, if you actually die during the Odin encounter, you don't die, but are instead removed from the fight, so there is no battle resing here. Also note that on Heroic difficulty, there will be another ad that spawns throughout the fight. This ad must be interrupted, or it will start doing massive damage to the entire group. Just interrupt it and burn it down quickly. So run out of Radiant Tempest, avoid spears and their light balls when they explode, and run to your brand when you get one. Luckily, you only have to get Odin to 80% health, as he has a crap ton of health. And that's all for bosses and trashes for Halls of Valor. Now let's go ahead and discuss the differences on Mythic, while discussing the achievements, which can only be completed on Mythic difficulty or higher. So, on Mythic, a couple of trash ads will be slightly different. First, Thundercallers will continue putting those little static fields on people, but when they expire, it will now stun the affected player and anyone nearby, making it very important to spread out from this move. The Mystic ads will no longer cast Healing Light, which is a strong HOT, but instead cast Holy Radiance, which heals everything nearby by 30% of their maximum health. You have to interrupt this and burn them down even quickly. The Sentinel ads will make all nearby enemies immune to stun and, more importantly, interrupts, meaning if you pull a Sentinel and a Mystic together, you're going to have a very bad time. Be extra careful to pull them separately, or at least not pull them with something that has to be interrupted or CC'd. Now for the bosses, on Mythic, Heimdall, aka the first boss, will do nearly everything the same. The only difference is that when Stormdrakes lay down that lightning field, they'll also spawn little lightning tornadoes that move outwards. You'll have to dodge these on top of getting out of future lightning fields. Now on both Heroic and Mythic, Herja will not lose her stacks that make her bubble and holy fireballs move stronger immediately when you move her across the room. Instead of just dropping off immediately, they actually go away 2 stacks whenever 1 stack of the next move is applied. The strategy is the same though, as moving back and forth after every Shield of Light should be enough to cover that time. Additionally, her Expel Light move puts a little like holy circle that explodes on players now. Now it bounces around to other players afterwards. This doesn't really affect you as a tank much, just know that there will be more bad holy circles to avoid throughout the entire fight. Now, one nasty new feature in Mythic, though, is that Sanctify, that holy fireball move that you have to dodge, now will damage the entire group if anyone gets hit. This means that everyone has to dodge everything, so it might actually be prudent to step away from her while she does this, even if it means you aren't hitting her for a few seconds, to make dodging a little bit easier. Now, Finra doesn't have any new mechanics for Mythic specifically. On both Heroic and Mythic, wolves will spawn with every unnerving howl, and they have their damage increased with other wolves nearby like the trash, but there's nothing new in Mythic specifically. However, there is an achievement tied to Finra's hunting grounds. The Storm Drake that appears at the beginning is the key. The Storm Drake will eat nearby stags as he walks over them, gaining a stack of bonus damage and bonus health. There are 10 stags in the area, and the Storm Drake needs to eat all of them. The best way to do this is to clear all the trash in the area, and Finra too, without killing any of the stags or even engaging them. Then you get to engage the Drake. Bring it down to, 20 to 30% or so, and then drag it around the stags. It's a bit long and arduous, but this is the safest way to get the achievement Stag Party. Now, speaking of achievements, the second is I Got What You Need. This is a simple achievement where you should clear the trash in the main hall, all the trash in the main hall, and grab 4 mugs of mead in sync with your group afterwards. As soon as you all have mugs, run up to the last chamber, across the Bridge of Light, and throw them together on the 4 kings. Boom! Achievement. Now on Heroic and Mythic, Scovold will create 3 flame adds that attack you after he picks up the shield. These flame adds just chase the nearest player and can't be tanked. They do a ton of damage and drop flames as they go. They can be stunned, snared, and other CC, and should be burned down very quickly. Now, there's nothing special about Mythic specifically, though. Also, on Heroic and Mythic, adds will spawn during the Odin fight. These adds just cast Surge repeatedly, which does a ton of damage to everyone in the group, and makes the next Surge cast even faster. You have to interrupt every single cast, especially in Mythic, since it gets faster twice as fast. These adds will always be top priority. Also, as the spears spawn, they're going to go ahead and shoot out some balls of light just as they spawn, similar to when they're shattered. They just need to be avoided like usual. Now, for the Surge Protector achievement, you need to interrupt every single cast of Surge throughout the entire fight. This should be pretty much what you're striving for anyway, so just shoot to kill the add and never let any cast go through. And that covers all of Halls of Valor. If you're looking for more dungeon or raid guides, click on the annotation in the top left of the video that's been taunting you this whole time to see more Legion guides. Hopefully you've enjoyed this guide for dummies. Please like, favorite, share, subscribe, all that jazz, and, as always, you keep it salty, Internet.
Stay away from me! Ah!